the access to physical resources ensures capacity building for communities. While this approach provides access to physical resources, the law of geographical indications can be used to provide intellectual ownership. To guarantee livelihood approach, cooperative experiments by blurring the private law and public law distinctions could be a way forward for forest dwelling communities. This requires okay, this I have already corrected this, so I can't read it now. But however, this requires addressing is not automatic because of the challenges within the laws as well as the governing structures. It's very, I mean, if you just look at the comment and you can do it in your own time, there's a very specific point that it is making, that it is not sufficient. Forest dwelling communities' rights cannot be ensured within FRA framework. We need to integrate it with geographical indications framework. That's the argument that this entire 5 or 6 long lines are making, right? So there's always a way, so always write in drafts and see if you can remove sentences, you can remove words, you can tie sentences together to make it look more concise and sharp, right? In the next slide, there's a consultation activity, but I'll skip that, and we can do that during Q&A if we have time. On concision, just this last, this is George Orwell's advice that, so George Orwell is known more for his dystopian novel, but he has also written a book. It's not a book actually, it's an essay. It's called Politics and the English Language. I have inserted the link of this essay in the last slide, and I'm hoping that it will be shared with everybody. It's a very, very good essay, and it tells you some very recurrent mistakes that we make as writers in the way we write, and there are 6 advice that Orwell has given to make sure that your writing is crisp, sharper, and also it attracts reader to read your work, right? You can go through it later, and you can also try to read the essay as a whole. Before we end, next slide. Before we end, we cannot not talk about the ethics of citations. Right, so I think this slide is slightly different from the one that I have on the screen, but it's alright. I'll read it out for you. I think Sana has shared an earlier version, but I'm assuming that everybody knows what citation is. Citation is basically the act of information or argument, the source where you take it from, right? Now there are certain established formats for doing citations that you need to follow, and in any particular academic piece, whether it be a book, a journal article, or a term paper that you are writing, the basic minimum requirement is that the citation format needs to be uniform. So I'll talk about why. So I mean, we know why citation is required, right? So it avoids plagiarism, so you're not make an argument to be your own while you've actually taken it from somewhere else. It gives credit to previous scholars and scholarship that exists in your field. It supports your arguments. So, for instance, if I just write that in India, intercaste marriage is not the norm, it would look very random, and it would look like a random opinion, right, lacking evidence. So there are 2 ways of making this particular sentence seem credible. One is that you show some empirical data. The other thing that you can do is that, because we cannot always find empirical data for the other sentence that we write in a paper, right? So the other way to do it is to cite people who have already said this. So for instance, I can write that when I explain the aversion against intercaste marriages, I can cite Ambedkar directly, and then other feminist and anti-caste scholars who have talked about caste endogamy being the norm in India, like Umar Chakrabarti, Janaki Abraham, or Sharmila Reddy. Just to end it, there's the next slide. There are examples of citation style. Oh, sorry, that's very useful link. So this is the last slide, but I'll just tell you that there are certain different style guides that you can follow for citations. So there's APA, which is American Psychological Association edition. There's Chicago, there's MLA, Harvard, there are various styles. There's a link that I've inserted in the main slide that I'm looking at, which I'll share with Pranav and other organizers, which can later be circulated. Thank you so much. I hope this has been useful, and we look forward to your questions and queries.
Thank you you so much, Sana and Monica, for this insightful session. We're really grateful that you shared your perspectives. We may now open the floor for questions. If anyone has any questions, you may raise your hand or drop your question in the chat box.
Just as the floor wants a question, I wanted to kind of add that a lot of information that we talked about perhaps is too advanced for undergrads, but it's always good to know because, especially because I understand some of you are professional as well, and in undergrad this is not really taught, right? But it's always helpful to know it from the beginning. It makes the journey smooth. And we have done sessions. For instance, Monica talked about citations, why these are important, how it is to be used further in detail. We have done separate sessions on it already. You can go to KASHF Initiatives website and check it out there whenever you have time. And we'll continue those sessions on it in future as well. But we do have a bit of Yeah, and just wanted to add that there's also one session available on the website on how to extract the main argument when you're reading the paper, right? So you can find certain relevant, things that we talked about in today's session. And of course, we'll continue to do more sessions that the students find important and useful.
Definitely please open the floors for questions. If you have any or any doubts and clarifications, please.
Also, Cyprus the link in the chat box. It has all the materials that we've been talking about. You can always go and have a look at these materials in addition to watching the YouTube sessions. Do we have any questions? Just don't hold back. If you have any doubts, however small it might be, or however stupid you think it is, it's not stupid. Please go ahead and ask. Farooq, are you trying to ask something?
Yes, Sana, I am going to ask a question. My name is Farooq, and I am actually a government employee, but I am also studying through IGNOU mode, and I actually also write things sometimes in newspapers or in other websites. My topic is on international relations and peace building. When we write something about conflict resolution, peace building, or international anything on international relations, as international relations is a political subject, keeping in view, we have to keep in view the arguments and the narratives of various parties of the conflict are the conflict or the war or other. How we can present the argument of the right side in a louder way, while as not totally neglecting the argument of the wrong side or the weaker side, because in conflicts we have seen the wronger sides are always wrong, while the weaker sides are always, weak, presenting the conflict in a total opposite direction. We get marginalized at that place. How we can write in a neutral way, but in a right way also, an article or any research paper or any. Well, I have asked this question to various. Some have said that we should be neutral. Some have said that we should support the right, well as get some insights for this question, so that in future I will also write good articles which can at least contribute to peace building. Thank you.
I can attempt it and then you can add if you want. I think that so first of all, we should also try to question whether when we write, are we actually neutral writers? Most of social science discipline has now questioned this idea whether whether research in social science is supposed to be quote unquote neutral and objective. Like most of the times, almost always, always actually. We are not neutral, right? We are already biased in the sense that if you were neutral, let's say in this in a context where they're in international relations, I'm not sure in what specific context you're talking about, but it's not a point to bring that up. But let's say that in any particular context, there are two parties, and one of them is drunk, and the other one is not. Let's say the weaker party. Your question is that how do you write from highlighting the side of the weaker view without looking like somebody who's just being I don't know, the mouthpiece of that side and not right. So I think one way to do it is to always write. To write. So class scholars who are already talking about it. If you show there's academic discourse around a particular topic, then you can always back your particular argument by citing scholars who are already there. Don't say it as something which you're coming up with on your own. It is always coming out of either existing scholarly work or existing media reportings, right? So cite the media reporting, cite the existing work. So that would help you bolster your argument and show that you are speaking from based on certain evidences and not just out of your own also about neutrality, I would just like to reiterate that we are never neutral, and if anybody was neutral in a context where there is very, let's say, evidently a weak and a strong party, it would still be siding with the strong party. So we have to just do away with the facade of neutrality, and the fact that you're already thinking about speaking from the, perspective of the weaker party already shows that you're not neutral, and it's always all right to not be neutral. Yeah, so I would say that to make it at least look academic and informative and not something which is random, cite. Sana, I mean, that.
Yeah, no, I second it. In social science, we cannot be value neutral. However, what we can do is we can make value aware, right? Value neutrality is value awareness. That is something very previous ones. The second bit is evidence, data. Back what you're saying, scholarship, the back as it is said, what you're saying. You can always show evidence too. So you can cite the arguments that are in your favor, and then you can cite the arguments that are not in your favor. That's what I'm saying. Then the opposite party also using some logic, some arguments, some facts. You can always contradict those facts based on already existing scholarship. That scholarship will already be in the media being taught, right? So then it shows that it's simply not you saying something purely on what you have thought of it. It's also backed by evidence, backed by data, backed by logic, right? And it's a sad thing that we have really rely on evidence sometimes to call out, say violence on a higher scale. We shouldn't have to do that in those ways. But because if you're writing an academic piece, that's how we conventionally do, right? Obviously, you can do different way of doing it in a written piece, but if you want to have a stronger written piece together, evidence is the way to go forward. But again, we have debates when what do we do when we don't have evidence on both sides, right? But that's for a different discussion. The choices that we make as learners. We can probably do some session on it sometimes later. But yeah, this is what I say to answer the question.
Thank you so much, Pratham. Thank you both.
Do we have any further question on the writing part? Praveen, do you wanna? Praveen,
I'm Praveen. I'm a PhD research scholar in India. I'm working with studies. It was also good to hear both of you. As researchers, we often come across a situation when we have to deal with the writer's block when we are writing theses or when we are writing research papers here. I think that you both also might have come across a situation when you would have dealt with that writer's block. So how do you deal with that situation? I would like to listen from you. What particular steps do you take when you find yourself in such a situation?
Omega, do you want to speak? Sure.
You can take that, yeah.
tell them, right, we just submit before 12. Okay, well, then let's do it that time. So we keep procrastinating. That affects that cycle basically. It's a vicious cycle we're playing out. If you're not able to break out of that cycle, it'll become a habit. Then we keep delaying these tasks. Because why? Reading a fair is less difficulty. You just have to really have a reading habit. That's right. Quadrature habits. So the moment it's the writing, in our head is like, time, focus here, making something that's it requires more creative. Like I'm not ready now. The good example. And keep reading all the time. I'm reading. I'm still reading. If I'm writing, I'm still reading. That's okay. So always we will take these steps to take 3 months of reading then getting ready. And that writing doesn't stop. If it's a term paper, take 2 days of reading, get into the habit. Even if it's bad writing. Even if it's still clear. But it's like you break and I tend to not how to write this book.
No, that's exactly it. Like that's exactly what I also do. So, for instance, like, I'll give some time to reading, and then I keep extending that time because I feel that it is easier to do, and I'm learning something new, right? So, one of the reasons that we don't want to write is also because that writing process is very mechanical, and you are not learning anything new in the process of writing. But when you're reading, it's really very thrilling because you're learning something new. You can go and talk to somebody, say that, oh, when I read this book today, right? So that's a more exciting process, and it's also easier to do. You can also be doing passive reading and not actively making notes, so it's easier to do. So there's a tendency to prolong the process of reading and shrink the process of writing, right? I still do that, but then there comes a point where you know that after this, if I don't start writing, then it will not get completed, right? So at that point, just start. One way of starting is that just write. So this is a discussion that I was having with my supervisor. That in the beginning, once you have read everything, you have some idea about what these scholars have said. You wouldn't remember exactly from where you picked it up or what the exact argument was. In the first draft, write an approximate argument. So I always write approximate arguments. Now, whether or not I'll be able to send the exact argument will depend on the number of drafts I'm able to write, right? If I have come to a point where I'm only able to write the first draft, I will probably be submitting that draft with approximate argument. Very random. That, okay, Uma Chakrabarti has talked about some random thing like caste and patriarchy are, interlinked. Something as broad and as random as that. But write it. Once you have written it, you will have like once everything is on paper, the anxiety and the inertia will be less to work on it again. But if there's a blank paper, there will always be an inertia to start, right? So when you're writing the first draft, make the job easy for yourself. If it is easy, you will do it. If it is tough, you won't do it. So the easy thing to do is to just write things on the top of your head. Don't go back to the books. Don't go back to the articles that you have written. Try to recall what you have written. Write your own arguments that you want to write. Most of the times we have already formed an argument in the process of reading. So we already know what we want to write, right? So just write that, and then in the second round, make your approximate citations that I've written something very broadly, and in the bracket I've written Uma Chakrabarti. So if I have the time to do a second draft, then go back and see that what is it exactly that she has said, and then pin cite it, and then make your sentence maybe more sophisticated, right? Even if you don't do that, it's fine. You have a complete draft. So just start. That's the situation.
I think I just pick on that complete draft Malabar. See, you can always edit a bad draft, but you cannot edit a no draft. Right? Have a bad draft. Don't worry, we all have bad writers. That's a good beginning. But have it done. Another way of doing it is to divide your paper, essay, or thesis into sections. Today I will do introduction 500 words. Tomorrow I will do another section. I will work on that section for 7 days. Every day I will write 150 to 200 words or 200 to 400 words. By the end of those 7 days, you'll have almost 2500 to 3000 words written. Right? So don't look at the thesis as a whole. It's not a mountain. Take short steps. Break your writing down into parts. Same. Today I'll start another chapter. I will give 1 to 2 months of that chapter, divide it day wise. Today 500 words on this argument. I will make this argument and treat for that argument in that 1 week. In the next week, write on that argument, having made your notes, etc. And know what you're trying to argue in that section. So if you know what you try to argue in that section, then you know your writing will flow around that argument. It will not unnecessarily, veer over or spill over. It will be more tight. And then of course editing is when you really know what you're trying to write. But have the draft ready.
Yeah. Thank you, Sana and Monica. So what I have got from this is that the only way to stop thinking about writing is by writing it. Thank you.
Right. So there are a couple of other questions. I believe the one by Shiva is, how can I develop a writing routine that helps me stay consistent and what's strategies to writers used to maintain discipline even on unmotivated days? I think you've answered that one more or less in Pershing's question. If you have anything to add. All right, okay. So we'll move on to the next question by Manjari, who says, given the vast literature on almost every topic, how much should we delve into realistically, especially when beginning to write academic?
Monica, do you want to answer that?
I can answer and you can add. This is a question that comes up almost in all the sessions that we do. Yeah, I understand that dilemma. I mean, when is it that we start writing? When is it enough of reading done, right? It will never be enough, especially if you're working, I mean, in any area actually, but the area that I work in especially, I feel like it would never end. I mean, there's been absolutely so much work on gender, sexuality, and law that there's no way that at some point I would have read all the works, right? So, one thing that one is that set a time. Okay, so for instance, if it has become like too much time since when you have been just reading, then at one point you have to start writing. But this is for people who are procrastinating a lot, and then at some point you have to start writing. But a more scientific and proper way of doing it is that once you start reading, so one way in which we read is that there are certain central texts that we know that we have to read, right? So for I keep giving this example, but let's say if somebody is working on rape in India, so you have to read Pratiksha Bakshi's work. Once you have read Pratiksha Bakshi's work, you would be snowballing, or you will be doing forward and backward citation chaining is what we call it, that you will look at works which have cited Pratiksha Bakshi's work. So through those snowballing and backward and forward citation methods, you come across other works that you find are relevant to your area of study. Over time, what will happen is that many of the works that you have read, will start occurring again and again in the bibliography and references, right? So at that point you will know that okay, I have read most of the important works in this field and now I can start writing. You will always feel okay, so this is one aspect that I've probably missed out on, but you can always add that missed out on aspect once you have started the process of writing. But I think once you have covered the foundational text, it's completely okay to start writing, and then keep on adding the reading in case you feel you find something important later on, right? So I would say, yeah, central text, and one way to know about central text is that what are the readings, what are the works which are repeatedly occurring in other works, and whether you have covered those recurrently occurring works in terms of reading.
Yeah, just to add to that, so as Monica said, reading will never be complete. You will be adding more readings even until the day you submit. Work with this premise, okay? Even before you're submitting, you might have read an article you want. Even after you submit, you'll be like, even though it's been 3 years now, I've submitted it. Because thesis and these papers have a life of its own, and they'll continue to live with us as long as we are alive, and maybe for some great authors even after that. You never know. Right? What is it that keeps them alive is that it's a debate, and there's always the potential to add to it. There are more readings, more developments which will keep happening in the field, and some of it you might have missed. That's fine. That's not the problem. What you need to, and this is the most beautiful part, in fact, not the problem. That's the most beautiful part here. It's like that dip in the ocean, to see the ocean. It's that vast ocean of knowledge. It's a very humbling experience because you see this ocean and there's only a drop that maybe you'll be able to take away from it, really, that you'll be able to cover. You will not be able to cover everything, and that's humbling because so much of the work has been done. People have worked so hard on things, and now we live in 2025. knowledge production has been happening in centuries. There's so much out there. It's not possible to read everything. So don't work with this idea. Try to read the important books. How will you know you've read important books? Think of it like a neighborhood. This is the example I always keep going back to. Imagine if you shift to a new house and a new locality. You do know when you know that locality, right? There comes that point when you know, okay, I'm getting out of the street. There is the milk shop is there, groceries are there, provision store is there, my neighbors are these. That familiarity is, it happens at some point after you spend maybe months there, a year there. Same happens with reading. You will know when certain authors are occurring again and again in bibliography. So if I've taken, for instance, Pratiksha Bakshi, I will read her canon text, then I will read her references. I will see who is the person she has cited, and I will go to those texts. Those texts might be citing Pratiksha Bakshi again and other texts. There will be a saturation point when you will be familiar with all the authors which are coming up. If not all, most of them, there will be familiar names. When that familiarity arises, when you know, okay, I've read this, these are this text I know. In bibliography, half the text you can recognize of other papers. That's the point you know that you've read enough. So it's always a good idea. Don't ignore the bibliography of the text you're reading. Go to the bibliography. Those bibliography will be branching into your further readings. Take up those readings. Eventually, that's a procedure to follow till you feel the authors' names are recurring. So that's one way of doing it. I hope I've answered the question.
Hello, my name is Altaf. Hope I'm audible.
Yes, you're audible. Thank you.
So first of all, I would love to thank you people for the efforts you are putting in and the wonderful sessions you are doing. So my question actually is, most of the time is what we are having the ideas, but when we start writing, whether it is academic writing or general writing, we actually become very conscious because we think we are putting these words on the paper. So what actually happens is we censor most of the times. We edit the text at the same time when we are writing it. So this is the first question, how to actually overcome that self-consciousness. And secondly, we are having the ideas, but we can't put together these ideas in a continuity. That coherence is most of the time is lacking. So that's what makes then that doubt our capability and our ability to actually write two sentences in that coherent manner. So how to actually get that more coherence in our writing and how to overcome that self-consciousness whenever we start writing. So thank you.
I mean, these questions will not have a very straightforward answer because I understand what this is. Initially, when we also start writing, we're still not very confident writers, I would say, and I don't think we'll ever be. But I think as soon as we put down words on the paper, we understand it's now tangible. It's there, right? Those words on paper, and there's a responsibility we assume for those words. So I think that's one of the reasons we become self-conscious, because now the words have a life of their own, and there's a responsibility attached to it. But at the same time, there's also self-doubt that are we making sense? And those things will keep happening. What we can do is maybe we can host a writing workshop at some point, because this is something which will be overcome only with practice. The more you write, the more you publish, the more you make others read. What you can do is always take feedback on your writing. Go to your teachers, go to your peers, go to your friends, or go to people who you hold high in your regards in terms of academic abilities, and take feedback from them. Don't worry what they're going to say. They might ridicule you. If they're good people who you've selected, if they're trustworthy people, they will not really ridicule you. The world might, but if you have a bunch of peers who you know are good, they might tell you and correct you and say maybe this is what you should revisit, maybe this is how you can write better, and always go with an open mind. Don't write with the point of getting appreciation. That won't happen. Everybody's not going to go there and say, oh, that's not the point. The point is to learn. The point is to self-reflect. And the only way to gain confidence is if you fully do justice with the word or with who we are. And we are students. Let's do justice with the word student. As long as we understand that we are students and we are here to learn. If we are here to learn, we will make mistakes. It's fine. It's completely fine. That's the fun part of being a student. As a teacher, you still cannot make those many errors. But as students, you're always allowed to make mistakes because that is when we are learning. So don't be scared of criticism. Don't be scared of being corrected. Sometimes that is what happens. Are we correct? Are we writing? Are we making sense? Am I, this is trash writing. What am I doing? If you have more peers, networks, etc., these people will tell you what is the best way. Maybe some people will tell you, maybe do this, maybe do that exercise. You might agree with certain things, you might not agree with those certain things. That's entirely for you to take. It's a decision that you make. But probably at some time, maybe I can talk to Daud. We can also do some writing groups together, and that probably will help. I was thinking of studying a writing group anyways, but I think that'll help because we do have it here, and we kind of that helps with feedback as well. So if you want to have a network to support you, maybe we can also do that. It's not a problem. I'm sure we have people who would be more than happy to look at writings and share theirs. And thank you for appreciating the work we do. Please, at some point, do give a shout out on social media so that more people know about the work we do. And we do circulate feedback forms towards the end of the session or on the WhatsApp group. Take time to please fill those feedback forms. Those are helpful for us to learn better and to learn more. Yes, are there more questions? I think there's more question in the chat. Do you want to take that up?
Yeah, so there's a question in the chat. It says, sometimes we come up with an idea or a problem, but a lot of work has already been done on it. So I want to ask how to find a research gap.
Why do I have to find a research gap is the question in the first place. It's not always important to have a research gap. Sometimes there might not be research gap. Sometimes you simply have a new perspective. Monica, do you want to take that question since I think I've spoken enough on that one in many sessions?
Okay, I can take it up and then you can add. Just to the previous question, I also wanted to say something similar to what Sana said. The answer to the first problem that you feel conscious about writing is peer review, and the answer to the second question that you have too many thoughts and you don't know how to bring it together is peer discussion. So I was supervising a course, and there was this one student who said that she was extremely very passionate about trans feminism, which was the module that I was supervising on, and a lot of times it happens that when we are very passionate about something, then it happens more that we have too many thoughts and we are not able to bring it together, right? So in those situations, it's very important to discuss your work, and that is exactly what happened in that supervision as well. And I just asked her that she can just join the supervision discussion. Supervision discussions are just like a small group discussions by just 3-4 students, and then there's one a senior student, let's say, who sit together and they discuss issues, right? Depending based on a particular writing. So just follow the same method. Whatever you're thinking about, and if you have too many thoughts, tell those thoughts to somebody else. Sometimes you don't even need to listen to the response of the other person. In the process of telling those thoughts to the other person, you are able to articulate your own ideas better. So talk more, talk to faculty members, talk to students' friends. It will solve the issue of bringing thoughts together, definitely. And if you feel conscious about writing because there's a lot of responsibility associated to it, definitely send your papers send whatever you write for peer review. Also, besides sending things for peer review, when we write something, we already know that what are the parts of that writing that we are conscious about, right? So once you identified that what are the things that you are particularly conscious about, just ask for more readings from people who work in that area. Because once you are able to back what you are saying through some scholars or through some empirical evidence, you will start feeling less conscious about it, because then you can show that this is something that many other people are saying, and it's not just something that I am saying, right? So constantly ask for literature to people who work in that area, be it faculty members, senior students, your own peer group, right? So that is one. To the question about if there's too much work, how do you find research gap? It really requires one is that it really depends on what discipline you are based in. There are disciplines which do not expect you to start with a research gap. So for instance, in social anthropology or any other discipline which is heavy on ethnographic methods, they don't expect you to start with a research gap to begin with. They expect you to immerse yourself in any particular area. Of course, you need to have an area of research. You need to have a broad topic. You need to have some idea about what you're going to talk about. But you might not have a precise research question, right? Having a precise research question is a very specific disciplinary methodological kind of area that exists in social sciences. It does not happen in all the places. So just to echo what Sana said, that you might not always need to have a predefined, very precise research question or research gap when you start your work, right? In ethnographic work, sometimes when you go to the field, based on what comes up from the field, what the field throws at you, your research gets defined, right? So you don't go with pre-existing concepts, pre-existing categories to the field. However, the same does not happen in, broadly, I would say, in political science. You're expected to have it, and there must be many other disciplines, but as a political science student, I can talk about political science. In most instances, you're expected to have a research question or a research gap. One way to do it is that if there's a lot of work, see, the thing is that if I ask, even if let's say there's a lot of work on tribal displacement and development projects, okay? If I ask two students to write an essay on tribal displacement and development projects, they will pick up on very different elements of it. Okay, so the first step is to recognize that what is the research area or specific aspect of that area that interests you, right? So you already know that this is the area in which I'm going to speak. Now, within that area, once you start reading, you will get to know that what are the kinds of, so there are various aspects on which you have to evaluate what you are reading. One aspect is that what are the findings and main arguments that these people are making. Is there a counter argument that you think that you can make? Is there further nuance that you can add to an argument? Is there something that you can say that, okay, this argument is true, but then this is also true. So can you add something to that argument? That is one way, right? You don't always have to do that. You might not be adding to the argument, but you can bring in some new theoretical approach that, okay, the introduction that I was showing, the example of the introduction, it said that this paper is just about showing the significance of post-colonial approach to criminology. So the conclusions might not be very different, but it is introducing a new approach to studying a discipline, right? So a new theoretical approach, a new conceptual approach, a new concept itself. A lot of work has been done on rape, but people have not talked about what are the various forms of rape, what are the various forms of harms that might exist in rape, besides the fact that it is non-consensual sexual intercourse, right? So there are different conceptual contributions that you can make. There are theoretical contributions that you can make. There are also methodological contributions that you can make. One of the reasons that many of the abstracts that we read only mentions the method and the conclusion is not because they are not aware of the fact that abstracts are supposed to be summary. It is because their main contribution is methodological, and that is why the abstract contains methodology, right? Because they are saying that nobody has used this method. This is the significance of using this method, and see, this is the conclusion that we arrive on, which might be slightly different from what the existing common sense in that field is, right? So these are various ways in which you can do it. Even if there's a lot of work, there's always some new perspective that you can bring in, either methodologically, theoretically, conceptually, or even in terms of arguments.
Yeah, I think I tend to agree with Monica. I quickly just want to go back to the question on coherence. I think I missed to address the coherence part. How do we add coherence in writing, right? So there's a tip I'll just quickly share. It might be beneficial to all of you. My supervisor, Professor Gurpreet Mahajan, had shared this with me back then in my MPhil, and I've realized it's a practice here that I've come to Oxford now. People do it here. They're taught to do it here. It's called marginal summaries, marginalia basically. So when you've written something, once you have the first draft, you've written something, what you can do is you can summarize each para in 3 lines. Okay, so there's a sheet of paper you've written on it. On the side, just keep summarizing your notes. Just keep summarizing your writing. So when you summarize each para into 3 lines, then you will see, you need to then read those 3 lines together. When you do that, you will automatically see what is missing, what is not coherent, what is the odd one out. Are these 3 lines talking to the next 3 summary lines of the next paragraph? Are those 3 lines then talking to the next ahead summary paragraph lines or not? If they're not talking to each other, then what you need to do is go back to the paragraph and see what is it which is making the whole summary skewed, which is making this a problem in your summary that is not able to speak to the next 3 paragraphs line. Remove that. Simple. Then you simply do the surgical incision, you remove it. That's how you see what is necessary for the argument to flow and what is not necessary. And then you can remove that part as long as those 3 lines of summary are speaking to each other. It's fine. If they're not speaking, that means there's some issue, there's some glitch in the paragraph. Go back to that paragraph, read and see what is causing that glitch, which makes the summary look odd, or is not speaking to the rest of the essays. So that's just one thing I thought that is really great because it's been helpful for me.
Oh, Sana, if I may interrupt you, what was your supervisor? What did you say? Dash Mahajan?
Gurpreet Mahajan.
Okay, cool. Because we intern under Chakravarti Mahajan, so I thought it was.
No, I was
just replying to Monica, like I and we wrote some of the papers, and our research idea was just looking at ethnomusicology. So we did not really, there were the logic and social anthropology, but we did not really look at any research gaps. We were just looking at how Kashmiri transgender women are weaponizing folk songs to speak to gender systems and its hierarchies from overlapping standpoints, or how has the social cultural fabric facilitated the development of mythical animals in Kashmir. So yeah, just to add to Monica, certain disciplines don't necessarily need you to have a research gap and then do research. Just look at general things. Yeah, thank you. You could ask questions. Yeah, please.
Absolutely, Daud. Thank you so much. Also, one is discipline, and also like the kind of research that you have proposed. Certain research are completely exploratory, and exploratory research means that there's already absolutely no work is very rare, but let's say not much work has happened in that field. So your research is already opening up a new area of research, right? So in that sense, there won't be a very precise research gap because that area itself is up for exploration. So it also depends on the kind of research that you are doing. But anyway, yeah. Thank you so much, Dawood, for that helpful example. Yeah.
And Sadia, do you have a question?
Yeah. Good evening. Hello all. I hope I'm audible. So I wanted to ask that we as students have some natural writing, which sometimes are in our favor and sometimes they're not. So I personally struggle with the habit of writing longish sentences, which has been pointed out to me more than I wanted actually. So I am working on it, but I would like to know the suggestions you might have regarding the same.
Do you struggle with writing long sentences, or writing long sentences is the problem?
Probably the latter.
No, I personally struggle with writing longish sentences.
So you want your sentence to be long?
No, I don't want it. I just tend to write longish sentences, which has been pointed out to me that it's not a very good exercise. The reader is not able to. Yeah, that's.
Got it, Monica.
In my academic writing session that I was doing previously in JNU, I always suggest students to check so once you've written the first draft, check your draft for link words and therefore comma in the middle of a long sentence, and just see if you can actually make a sentence break there instead of writing that link word. So a number of times we are saying so something and then and so and so something as this also, but a number of times before writing that as, you can just slash out actually that as, put a full stop and start a new sentence. So check your draft for link words, as, and, therefore, comma, and then some link word. So if you just do that check, it would help you in just breaking your sentence instead of making it long. That is one way of doing it.
Yeah,
it's something like I've been.
Go ahead, Sadia.
Could you just repeat, Sadia? We could not hear you.
No, I was just saying that it's a natural propensity that I tend to write longish sentences, which has been pointed out to me that it's not a very good exercise. Readers are not able to keep up with the sentences, such longish sentences. So it's always a better idea to break your sentences into, whichever way you can break them. But I personally struggle with.
Yeah. That's totally all right. I think many of us struggle with that. So one is that look at the link words, and the other is also this another point that I wanted to make, and this is helpful for both structuring your paragraphs and also writing smaller sentences, which is basically always check whether you are trying to make too many points in one sentence. We are trying to do that sometimes. So we know that we have said something before writing that sentence that is making 2 points, and we want to now summarize those 2 points in this line that we want to write, right? There's no need to do that. We can just write it in 2 lines, and you can use again those words that I was referring to. I don't know what those were also a form of link words. So firstly, secondly, right? So try to use different kinds of link words to break sentences instead of writing and. So that is one way of doing it, and do that. I'm not just saying this to you, probably you're completely fine on that front, but for anybody else who has problems in structuring paragraphs of the essay, make sure that when you are, sometimes, what we do is that we want to make our paragraphs look symmetrical. So all paragraphs should be of the same length. We forget that there's a reason why we write things in paragraph, right? Which is basically for the reader to understand that you are now from one point to the other. So always check both your paragraphs and your sentence to make sure to kind of corroborate whether you have made just 1 point or were you trying to make too many points in a single line or a single paragraph. So that is one way of reducing the length.
I kind of tend to agree with Monica. What happens is, to accept this fact that one of the few things which is still not taxed are sentences. You can be economical. You don't have to be economical with words. Right? You don't need to hold back and do everything in one sentence. So what you can do is, and again, this is one of the exercises that we also used to do, is color code. This is a longer exercise, but if you have time, if you have the effort, you can color code every sentence and just highlight all the sentences in different colors. The more you see a particular color, you'll know the sentence is longer, right? Sometimes we tend to oversight. Go to that sentence, see what is happening there. Most of the time, and I say with all responsibility, most of the time when we are giving a reasoning or examples, we'll keep adding. We don't know where it's going to stop. So reason, because this is going to happen, and therefore, however, stop. You don't have to, the because doesn't have to be it. It can come in the next sentence. कोई problem नहीं होगा, उसको काटो. Don't worry about that. It can come in the next sentence. So you can continue that. Flow is something we sometimes think it can come only in one sentence altogether. No. Flow can come from multiple sentences. Different sentences can speak to each other. So break it down there. Because reasoning, etc., examples can come in a different set of sentence. And don't worry, you're not alone in this. It's not a propensity that you have. I think as human, we like to just keep writing and not stop, and therefore, But always the point of any writing should be that it should be easy for the reader to follow. Make things very easy and simple for the reader.
Yeah.
Right? So just, you're right, it's difficult for the readers to follow long sentences. Philosophers used to do that once in a while. Great philosophers have written sentences on page, and it's not